Chapter 2, Piano Voicing with Primary Triads. Now the tonic triad, the one chord, together with those triads that have fifth relationships to the tonic, are called primary triads. That's the one chord, tonic, the 4, the subdominant, and the 5, the dominant. Remember, the dominant chord is found a fifth above tonic, and the subdominant chord is found a fifth below tonic. Now, interestingly enough, using only these three primary chords, 1, 4, and 5, we can harmonize any note of the major scale. And the word harmonize means to add chord tones to a melody. And to figure out which chords that are available for a harmonization, we just find the triads that include the scale degrees that match with the melody notes. So some notes of the major scale can be harmonized by more than one primary chord. And here's a chart that shows you that correlation. So for example, if you look at the one chord and think of the key of C. So C, E, and G, that's the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the scale. The 4 chord, the F chord, is F, A, and C. That's the 4th scale degree, the 6th scale degree, and the tonic, the 1 scale degree. And there's the 5 chord, G, B, D. That's scale degrees 5, 7, and 2. And as you can see by this chart, that covers every note of the major scale. And some of those notes of the major scale actually have 2 possible chords that could harmonize with them, like the scale degree 1. Either the 1 chord, the C chord, or the F chord could match with that note. Or you can see on scale degree 5, either the 1 chord has that note G, or the 5 chord, of course, has that note G. So let's try this. Let's harmonize this little melody in the key of C major. To complete a harmonization like this, first identify which primary chords can harmonize with these specific melodic pitches, and then write those Roman numerals underneath. In other words, for the first note, which chords have an E? We're only going to use 1, 4, and 5 for the time being. Okay, so here we go. The first note is E, and the C chord, the 1 chord, has that pitch. The next note is F, and the F chord has that pitch. Back to E, so the 1 chord, and then D, and the only chord that has the D is the 5 chord, and then back to E, and that's the 1 chord. Again, we're only using 1s, 4s, and 5s for now. The next step is to put those proper chord tones beneath the melody tones. So we want to keep the melody as the highest note, so that it can be heard really clearly as the melody. So when we add these chord tones, these harmony tones, they're going to be below those melody tones. This kind of chord arrangement is called piano voicing. So, piano voicing involves placing 3 pitches in the treble clef to be played by the right hand, and 1 pitch in the bass clef to be played by the left hand. To complete the right hand part, add in the 2 remaining pitches that will complete the harmony. For example, the first note of the harmony is E, and we decided the chord is a 1 chord, C, E, and G. So keep that highest note, E, right where it is, and the other 2 pitches of the chord, the C and the G, place them directly underneath that melody note and as close as they can be. So keep them below the melody pitch. Next, add in the bass note for the left hand, and this is easy. What we're going to do is just write the root tone of the chord. So if it's a C chord, we're going to put C in the bass. And as you probably remember, whenever the root tone is the lowest pitch, the bass pitch, we call this root position. So in this example, we're going to write every chord in root position. Okay, so take a look at the 3 notes in the treble clef. Notice that the distance between the upper note E and the lowest note G is less than an octave. And for that reason, we can say that this chord is in close spacing. So, close spacing is an arrangement of 4 notes in which the span of the upper 3 notes is less than an octave. Now, we can complete the harmonization of our melody by continuing with the piano voicing in close spacing. Each of those melody notes, we're keeping as the highest note, and we're putting the other notes of the chord underneath it to fill in the harmony, and in the bass, just the root of the chord. Okay, I'm going to take a moment here and actually work this out for you. This is the example that I was just talking about. It starts on example 2.4, in which you've got a melody, and I'm going to go ahead and write that here on a piece of scrap paper. And it's in the key of C in 4/4 time. And is E, F, E, D. Let me get the measure line. And then ends on E at the end. So you can see that it's labeled here. I'm going to put the labels actually way down here. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. We already determined that those are the chords that could fit those melody notes. Now, it's good to actually refer to a chart of the chords in a particular key. If we're in the key of C, it's nice to have a chart of the key of C so that we can keep track of what we're doing. In this chapter, we only need the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. 1, 4, and 5. And just to keep track of that, I'm going to take those notes and write them up here. C, E, G. That's the 1 chord. I'm going to say C, E, and G. The 4 chord is F, A, C. I'm going to write that here. F, A, C. The 1 chord's the same. I don't need to write that again. And then the 5 chord is G, B, D. Now, so this makes it easy. I take a look at the top note, which is E, and I want to keep that as the melody, so I'll keep that as the highest voice. And I'm going to take these other notes. I've already got the E. The next note coming down, I can see is a C. I'm going to get these notes as close as possible and write them. And then the next, as I keep going down, I see there's a G. So I'll put the G there. Unless I'm crossing them out as I write them to make sure I've got all 3. And since it's a C chord, I'm going to put the C in the bass. And this is piano voicing. Here's a 4 chord. So F, A, C. Notice I've already got an F in the melody. I come down from the melody and notice that I get a C right there. Trying to find those notes as close as possible. And then I keep coming a little further and I get an A right there. And I put the F in the bass because it's an F chord. I'm going to put the root tone in the bass. Back to a C chord, C, E, G. There's the E. Actually, it's the same as that one. I can just copy it. And then I've got G, B, D. That pitches a D. So I come down and the next closest note is B. And the next closest note is G. Now I've got them all. And of course, I'm going to put the G in the bass because it's a G chord. By putting the root tones in the bass, I've got all root position chords. And then I end back on a C chord. Of course, C, E, and G. The E is there. The C is here. And the G here, as close as I can get those notes. And I'm going to put the C in the bass. Okay. Let me play this for you so you can see what it sounds like. So let's go ahead and see what this sounds like. This is in the key of C, and piano voicing actually sounds quite nice on the piano. I take my right hand and put it up here. My melody note is E, and I'm going to play the root tones in the bass. It sounds like this. Actually, not too hard to play. The next thing we want to do is take a look at the Check Your Understanding 2.1. And here you're going to just do these examples. You should try these yourself first, and then come back here to this video and make sure that you're doing it correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now. This is the key of D. I'm going to write a 1 chord, a 5, and then a 1. Here's the melody. D, C sharp, D. We're in the key of D, so the key signature is 2 sharps for the key of D. Not a bad idea to have a piece of scrap paper, because if you're going to write chords in the key of D, it's good to have a reference for them. So I write the key signature of D. This is D major. And watch me do this as a little shorthand. I write the 1 chord, which is D, of course. I don't need to write all the chords, because remember, I only need 1, 4, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 brings me up to here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brings me up to here. So for this chapter, we only need 3 chords. I'm going to go ahead also and just make sure I know how the key signature is affecting those notes. That's an F sharp, and that's a C sharp. So we can see why these chords were picked here, because the D could have been a 1 chord that has a D. It could have been a 4 chord too, that also has a D. The C sharp, the only one that has a C sharp is 5. So the chord that was picked is 5. Now I'm going to take the notes of these chords, D, F sharp, A, and just indicate that up here for myself so I know which notes I'm picking from. And then the 5 chord, I'm going to get the notes from here, A, C sharp, and E. And of course back to the 1 chord is just D, F sharp, and A again. So this one's been done. Let's try this one. We keep that melody note on the top. Don't write any notes above it. Keep all your notes below it. That's a C sharp. The next note lower that you can find out of these is A. And if I keep going lower, the next note that I can find is E. You can finish that stem, and you remember what to put in the bass. In the bass, we always put the root, which is the name of the chord. In these examples, you always go back to the original chord, but just to see how it's done, let's go ahead and do this. D, F sharp, A, that is a D. Don't put anything above it, only below it. If I go down, the next note of those 2 that I get to is A. And if I go down further, the next note I get to is F sharp. F sharp, of course, is in the key signature, so I don't actually have to put the sharp on the note, and then it comes back. And here's the next one. This is the key of B flat, so I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and write the key of B flat on a piece of scrap paper. B flat has 2 flats, B flat and E flat. And since I'm going to be dealing with 1, 4, and 5 chords, I'm going to write the 1 chord. That's the B flat chord. I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and write the 4 chord. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 higher is the 5 chord. And also, I always like to look at the key signature. B flat, make sure I know that that's a B flat. E flat, make sure I know that that's an E flat. And look, there's a B flat there as well. Now, this one's already been harmonized for you. In other words, the pitch D has been decided you should use a 1 chord, because there's the pitch D in the 1 chord. The pitch E flat, you can only find that in the 4 chord. So there it is. I'm going to take these notes and write them up above. For the 1 chord, B flat, D, F. And for the 4 chord, E flat, G, B flat. And back to the 1 chord, B flat, D, F. The first one's been done, so I'll do this one. The top note is E flat, that's the melody. I come down, and the next pitch I get to out of those 2 is B flat. I come down, the next one I get to is G. And what should I put in the bass? Of course, the root tone, E flat. And finally, I do this one, which is going to look just like that, but we'll go ahead and do it. There's the D, and I come down from the D, keeping that on the top because it's the melody, and the next note I get to is B flat. And I come down, the next one I get to is F. And then because it's a B flat chord, I'm going to put B flat in the bass, and now that's done. Let's go ahead and listen to what these check your understanding examples sound like. The first one is in the key of D, and I'm going to put my right hand up here with a D as the highest note. Make sure that I play in the key signatures, all the F sharps and C sharps, and it sounds like this. 1 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord. I also like the way there's a really nice voice leading when I do it this way. What that means is it's really easy for me to get from one chord to the next because the chord tones are really quite close to each other as I go from chord to chord. The next one's in the key of B flat. So I start with a B flat chord with a D on top. Go up to the 4 chord and back to the B flat.